So, hi. So, this particular podcast, sort of, which I'll be uploading on YouTube or even on my website, rather, it's about my book, Mathematics of Karma. And it's basically a small essay that I had written in the appendix of Mathematics of Karma. You can either read the ebook on its own on Amazon Kindle. Till next year, I think it is free for Kindle Unlimited, and even then later also, few of the titles I will try to keep free, and few of them will be under a paywall, and that is to make sure that even the knowledge at a reasonable price is distributed, but it's a win situation for both the reader and the author itself. And if you see the book that I have written, the Complete Jyotish, so that has basically four books, in which one of them is the Mathematics of Karma. Mathematics of Karma is basically, as the name suggests, is basically trying to find the statistics and probability of different yogas, doshas, and all of those things which are happening in Vedic astrology. And in Vedic astrology, is basically nothing but actually your karma mapped, or basically an explanation of why things happen, right? At least, even if you don't believe in it, or even if it is not right, at least that's what the books say, right? So this is just the mathematics behind it. But after all the statistics, mathematics, and rationalization, which I have provided in the book, and I would want people to go through it, this is something that I wanted to share, which is more on the philosophical and maybe slightly spiritual side of my book, which I wanted to share. Such spiritual insights are there across all my books, ebooks, and there's a separate book called What the Days Revealed About Life, which is on poetry, and I discuss moral philosophy, life in general in depth. But for now, let us just begin and let me read it out. So, this is a personal essay set apart from my statistical chapters. These are my own reflection in my own voice, of course, a bit structured and edited grammatically for by AI. So, morality has always fascinated me, not because I believe it is um, simple, but because I believe it is one of the most complicated things human beings have ever tried to define. We often grow up hearing statements like be a good person or do the right thing, or morality matters more than wealth. But the older I grow, the more I realize something uncomfortable. Morality is, in many ways, a privilege. It is easier to be moral when life gives you the resources, stability, safety, and freedom to choose morality comfortably. A hungry man and a well fed man do not negotiate with ethics from the same psychological space. A mother in the war stricken zone stealing bread for her starving child and a wealthy corporate thief committing fraud are both stealing by definition. Yet, morally, emotionally, and psychologically and socially, they are not perceived the same way. The shopkeeper may see theft as wrong, but his survival depends on his store. The mother sees feeding her child as necessity greater than law itself. Then who here is morally correct? This is where morality stops being binary and start becoming deeply human. Uh, there's also something that I see, even if you now, this is something outside the book's words, which I will say, because this is my own interpretation and my own views, right? See, again, here I'm exploring the gray regions of life, not just black and white. And let's say, even if we say the mother is still wrong for stealing the bread for her child. But the point is not, and the shopkeeper is not wrong to be angry because even he has livelihood to depend on, right? So both are correct in their own way, or maybe one is even wrong, right? But this is a very deeply human thing which I want you to explore in your mind. Maybe give it a minute or so, okay? Just give it a 10-second thought. Okay, so now after this pause, I will now restart from the next paragraph. Even in the Hindu traditions, wealth was never treated as something evil. In fact, wealth was also often considered necessary for sustaining dharma itself. During Diwali, we also worship Ma Lakshmi. There is an implicit acknowledgement hidden beneath devotion, even for puja, for rituals, or for maintaining culture, temple, uh, the process of charity, festivals, food offerings, home education, and stability. Money is required. Lakshmi is not merely worshipped for luxury. She is worshipped because material stability gives human being the ability to live with dignity, to contribute to the society, and sometimes even practice morality itself. A person constantly worried about survival rarely has the privilege of philosophical purity. Uh, Actually, this can go very deep, but this also reminds me of the fact that a lot of times, if we see Buddha, Gautam Buddha, a personality I'm very affected by, or rather, God itself, or an avatar, or however you want to name the entity, it's something that has always perplexed me a lot, and people don't realize that it took him many janmas to actually attain the Buddhahood. And he was, I mean, I have written it in the next paragraph, so I'll again read directly and not maybe digress from the paragraph. I'm just trying to give context to few of my words, which might be a little difficult for new um, folks to understand or might seem too complex. So the idea exists across civilizations and religion in different forms. Even Gautam Buddha, before renouncing everything, was born a prince. He had the privilege of first experiencing security, shelter, education, and protection from suffering. Only after that he could detach from material world and pursue moksha. That does not reduce Buddha's greatness, but it does raise an important philosophical question. How many people truly get mental space to pursue enlightenment without worrying about food, rent, war, debt, disease, and survive? Again, morality and spirituality become easier to pursue when certain foundational human struggles are already addressed. This is why I personally feel morality is subjective in many situations, even though some universal truth do exist. There are some something humanity collectively agrees upon across cultures and religions. Um, Rape is wrong, unnecessary violence is wrong, cruelty is wrong, exploitation is wrong. There are moral lines that civilization repeatedly arrive at, regardless of, as I said, religion or geography. But beyond those universal truths, morality becomes layered. Let's take another example. Imagine a shopkeeper running a cigarette on an alcohol business. Society may call these sin goods because they harm health, yet the same shopkeeper's mother pray every day that his or slash her business success so her grandchildren can study in a good school, live a better life, and escape poverty. Is the family immoral, or are they simply surviving within the structure society created itself? This is why I struggle with rigid moral absolutism. Human life is too complex to always divide people into heroes and villains. One of my favorite modern exploratory explorations of moralities rather came from the Netflix show The Good Place. There was a recurring philosophical idea around what we owe to each other, a book that I love that concept so much that one of my birthday gifts I asked from someone special was the book connected to these ideas, and I remember reading it with genuine curiosity and how social construct ethics. Oh, sorry, how society construct the ethics. What fascinated me more was this: morality itself is often a social agreement shaped over centuries, right? Different countries, religion, economic conditions, and cultures define morality differently, yet societies still operate on some common ground rules that allow coexistence, right? Think about this. And even those rules evolve with time. What we considered moral centuries ago may now be condemned, and what is condemned today may be normalized tomorrow. Human morality is not static. It continuously negotiates with power, empathy, suffering, economics, religion, science, and survival. think about it again. And this is a very important line. And, I like to also, I mean, I didn't write it in the part of book, but think about, one of the arguments I was reading, and, the Chief Justice of India once said, I mean, it was argued rather, not said directly, that Constitution is a living document, and the same has been said for US Constitution also. So it's all about morality being looked at a living document, which is both risky, I mean, in a good way and in a bad way, but that's how we are. I mean, that's how the things rule. Okay, so there's another perspective that deeply influenced me in the anime Naruto. So these are all from anime friends, by the way. There is a line by Itachi Uchiha which paraphrase simply says morality and our perception of reality are shaped by our knowledge and experiences. That idea has stayed with me for years, because what we call morality is often filtered by, or filtered through rather, upbringing, trauma, privilege, education, environment, culture, and personal suffering. Just to repeat, I'm going to say it again: filtered through upbringing, trauma, privilege, education, environment, perspective. One could even extend this towards sanskar. So, sanskar in Hindi, as you know, it's also basically the English paraphrasing would be values, or uh, ethics passed down to family, or family values, basically. In a very simple way, I would say. Not just conditioning and upbringing of this Janma. So in Hinduism, we have the concept of Janmas. Maybe you read upon this after podcast. But perhaps impression carried from previous Janmas as well. From a scientific perspective, this mirrors the nature versus nurture debate. Nature refers to how we inherently wired. Nurture refers to how world shapes us, right? And somewhere between these two forces, I feel morality emerges, not as a perfect system, but as a negotiation, right, between these two. Perhaps this is why I become slower to judge people as I grow older. So as I was young, now also I feel I'm a bit judgmental, but with age, again, you, because you understand, right? Understanding, I remember one. I think it was Madame Curie, or I don't know which scientist said, the more you understand, the less you fear and the less you judge. It was beautiful. I don't know. It was one of my friends was in research, and in his PPT he was presenting that the more you understand something, the less you fear it. And maybe the less you judge it also. Could be. Anyway, perhaps that's why I become slower to judge people as I grow older, not because morality does not matter to me. Oh, it matters a lot, by the way. But because now I now understand the context matters too. Hmm. Okay. The world often celebrates morality without acknowledging the infrastructure required to sustain it. Stable home, loving families, education, food security, healthcare, emotional support, again, very underestimated, and economic opportunity. These things silently shape the ethical behavior more than we admit. A child raised in violence learns morality differently from a child raised in safety, right? A person betrayed repeatedly may understand trust differently from a person protected all their life. A hungry person negotiates ethics differently from someone financially secure. This does not excuse wrongdoing, but it does humanize it. And maybe humanity without empathy becomes nothing more than moral arrogance. Okay, this is a bit complex, so I think I should maybe explain my view on this. So when I say that I'm not trying to defend anyone who's stealing bread now also, by the way. I'm still saying it's wrong. I see from the start till end, I've never defended any wrongdoing. See, if the same happens to me, I will not try to be, holier than thou. I know it is wrong. I will feel bad as the shopkeeper would have felt bad. So nobody's saying that protect them, or, you forgive them or don't penalize them. My point is, at least try to understand them, try to humanize the error. Right. Because if you are saying no empathy is there for that, no pity also, then maybe it's moral arrogance then. Holier than thou attitude. And believe me, we all go through it. I think anyone in spiritual journey goes through the spiritual ego experience, but then part and parcel of life. Sorry if I'm feeling rushing it, because it is quite a lot that I've written. Now that I realize it, it's almost been what, 3 to 4 months since I published this book. But yeah, what I also personally realized over time is that morality cannot simply be imposed on people like rigid checklist. At the end of the day, every human being carries a different story, different wounds, different conditioning, and different experiences. This is why whenever someone asks me for an advice, I rarely tell them what they should do. Instead, I usually tell them what I would do in their shoes. Again, a little explanation, sorry. What I mean to say is, say, if in Hindi we have a word called gyan, knowledge. So most of my friends say gyan mat fail, which means don't give free advice, bro. I'm not asked. And that's true, because see, they are going through something that you can't experience. And let's say, even if you experience it, let's say you have the same number of hours as another person and you can score the same grade. My question to you is, are you born with the same brain, same skill set, same thing? So you can't actually possibly feel everything there. It's humanly, and if you have done that, believe me, you have attained Buddhahood or probably became almost at a god level. So I don't think that's so easy for a normal person, at least like me. So I generally, the best way, at least this is personally what I do, is I say what I would do if I were in their place with my perspective only. And I like the same thing given to me. So this is something that's there. Mm, So, because perspectives matter, and because ultimately every person has to live with the consequence of their own decision. Exactly. So, there is an old Hindi saying I grew up with hearing from my parents, which I still deeply follow. Suno sabki, karo apni. Loosely translated, it means listen to everyone, but in the end, take your own decision. I think that line beautifully captures the burden and freedom of being human. Okay, this is important line. I would like to repeat it again. I'm sorry. I think the line beautifully captures the burden and the freedom of being human. You can seek guidance, philosophy, religion, science, family, mentors, books, spirituality, even strangers online, but eventually the final choice is yours. And sadly, that is one of your greatest responsibilities of human existence. Nobody can completely carry the moral weight of your decisions for you. Again, a little bit extra gyan I'm going to add here is, hmm, do you know whether it's Buddha or even in Hindu stories of Purans and etc. When I was reading about it, I've constantly seen, even Sikhism and everywhere, that we as a, I mean, I'm talking about Sanatan Dharma, a non-Abrahamic generally. We are little, maybe this is controversial in my own opinion, but we are a little selfish with our karma. Of course, there are sayings and there are mentions where wife and husband share karma, children and parents share karma. But at the core of it, whatever you experience and how you experience life is your own doing, right? Your own karma, your own whatever experiences. And that shapes you. So, and it's coming from basically same children born in the same house. One may be successful, one may not be. And from an atheist perspective, some people may not even believe in this whole karma thing. They might consider this bullshit, fine by them. They can skip this particular podcast, but just hypothetically assume then that is true. So, what I'm trying to say is, uh, at the end of the day, you have to carry the weights of your karma in a way. If you understand what I'm trying. So, there's a lot of religion, spirituality also mixed in these words, which I'm trying to say. And this is just my perspective. Again, someone can read it very separately on their own way, right? This book is written for all atheists, this, that, and not everyone has to like the topic of this. So, this is why morality as a practice is incredibly difficult. People often speak about goodness as if it's effortless. It is not. Oh, I have so. I mean, when I am reading this again, it's bringing up the emotions which came when I wrote this. Being ethical when angry is difficult. Being kind when hurt is difficult. Being honest when dishonesty benefits you is difficult. Forgiving people is difficult. And holding empathy while surviving your own pain is difficult. Actually, I had written um, some other word. I think GPT in editing, made it a little lighter with the word difficult. So I'm just gonna s- this thing skip over that. And perhaps that is why I love a particular speech from the show Doctor Who so much. Without quoting it directly, of course, for copyright reason, there is a beautiful idea in it that goodness matters most in the darkest moment, in the deepest pit, when everything inside you wants to stop trying. That stayed with me. Because morality is not tested when life is easy, it is tested when life breaks you. Even then, I do believe there should still exist a basic ethical code that we try to uphold as human beings, not perfection, because perfection is impossible, but effort. Um, okay, I hope this is, I do, okay. So basically, what I'm trying to say is, okay, how can I make it simple? Honestly, this is so deep because I remember the kind of thought. I mean, I'm very thankful to AI that it has made my English uh, much more simpler because that's what I requested. But these are very deep words, and I've written them in a lot of pain. So I'm trying to tell people, like, if I had to explain a 15-year-old child how to do this, what I'm trying to say basically is, see, your own morality, the subject of morality, will be tested only during difficult times. And nobody is trying telling you you can be perfect. Even I can't be. But at least effort matters, right? You try. And basic ethical code, like I will not be hitting people on the street and this. Basic, not because of the law. Again, law and ethics are different. Again, maybe I should have added that, but then this would have become a book on its own. So basic ethics could have been kept. So this is something that I want to also do. So this is something deeply connected to how I was raised. I still remember the hardest phase of my academic life, mathematics, especially Euclidean geometry. Oh God, it still brings back nightmares. Okay, but if I remember correctly, it was around ninth standard or eighth standard. I'm not sure by the way, but I've written ninth standard. NCRT mathematics. Strange enough, today I study concepts like Euclidean distance and machine learning, despite absolutely hating mathematics as a subject at a point of time. I think many people can relate with me on this. Life has a strange sense of irony. The subjects that once became our greatest pain sometimes become part of our expertise later. But what stayed with me more than mathematics was something my father once told me during difficult phase. Results matter, but more than results, I want to see your efforts. So, and one more thing, which maybe on the podcast I want to add. My father also said one thing. He said it in Hindi, so I'll just say the Hindi part. कभी कभी दर्द का एक हद से ज्यादा हो जाना दवा बन जाता है. I think he had quoted one of the poets, and I really now understand, And one more thing he said, few days before he died, I don't know, magically, and I still remember these words. Nothing in this life is indispensable, including life itself. So maybe that's something I just wanted to share with you. So this line shaped me deeply because on efforts feel honest. And perhaps this is why two verses from the Bhagavad Gita have always remained close to my heart. So my father's favorite was, by the way, chapter 2, verse 47. Mine is chapter 18, verse 47. It's better to perform one's own dharma imperfectly than to perform others perfectly, or others dharma, whatever. So others dharma perfectly, sorry. I have always loved the idea because it removes the pressure of imitation, right? You do not have to copy. I don't have to sit and live others' life meaningfully. Your own path, even if you have mistakes and imperfection, it still carries value. The second idea comes from chapter 2, verse 40, not 47. That was my father's favorite, by the way. In this path, no effort is ever wasted, and even a little progress protects one from great fear. This verse speaks to me on a very personal level, maybe because I always had a little slightly commerce oriented brain. Economics was one of my favorite subjects in school. By the way, I was a CBSE science student who took economics as a optional subject. So you can just imagine how much I love this. Later, even in college, I gravitated over operational research, finance thinking, and eventually, even in this machine learning master's, probably while I'm having this podcast, I'm taking BFSI specialization. So, finance is one of the subjects that somehow never left me. Or maybe I never left it. It has always remained like a complicated romance in the background of my life. Difficult, boring, sometimes overwhelming, yet endlessly fascinating. And perhaps because of that mindset, I've always found comfort in the idea that genuine effort is not truly wasted. Because obviously, right, finance brain, you would not want loss. And my father always used to say, chapter 2, verse 47, Karm phaleshu kadachana, meaning whatever karm you do, don't expect the result of it. You are only entitled to the dharma of doing the action, not to the fruits of it. But I used to be like, I mean, I'm still human and I get it. Like, I should, this true spirituality would be not keeping expect, just do it and forget it. But still, that sort of like a satisfaction that, okay, even if I don't get result from this, okay, I can let that go. But is what I'm doing is being ethical or being right or moral, not for a reward of going someplace great after death? Or I'm saying there's no I'm just saying, okay, there's no nothing after death, even Hindu way. But can there be some form of, not reward exactly, but maybe satisfaction? Maybe I'm not able to put the words right, maybe I'm not able to articulate it right, but maybe some form of you know protection, or not even religious protection or spiritual protection, but satisfaction, or that, okay, this is not getting wasted, my feelings are not getting wasted, my feeling of helping others is not in vain. Basically, I don't like things going in vain. And this verse really connected with me, chapter 2, verse 40. So I always like to quote it across many books. I have written these two quotes. So yeah. Um, So maybe morality works similarly. Maybe even small act of kindness matters. Maybe every attempt to improve matters. Maybe every effort to become slightly better than yesterday matters. Even if imperfectly, even if slowly, even if nobody notices. At the end of the day, I do believe society needs moral frameworks to function. Without them, chaos will consume civilization. But I also believe morality should be discussed with humility rather than superiority, because every human is fighting circumstance which we may fully never understand. That's actually wow. This is, I know this is like sounding very simple English, but I remember for what scenario I had written this book, because in what we owe to each other, if you read the book, it's like a textbook, and it's in many of the US colleges where moral philosophy is taught, I think it's one of the major textbooks, I think, for a credit subject. And they had, I just request everyone to read it. Maybe then they will, when they read these words, they'll understand why it's so thought provoking. Mm, because the example I'm thinking right now is basically, see, when I wrote this, because it reminds me why I wrote these letters or these journal or voice note, which I then combined into words and wrote it in the book. But yeah, um, and last paragraph. Sometimes the difference between moral person and immoral, one is not the character alone, that is, the I am, but the resources, opportunities, suffering, timing, and survival and self. Maybe morality was never meant to create perfect people. Maybe it was simply to remind imperfect people to keep trying. So, this is just an essay of my book. It's extension of my poetry book also, expert. Um, except here, each emotion and concept is explored very deeply. Even there, it is deep only, but not to this extent. I mean, there are multiple concepts given in brief. So I would request anyone who, by mistake or intentionally, comes to this podcast, or I don't know what to call this, maybe a voice um, session, please do see it.